The Honourable, the Speaker.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have noted the contributions of members opposite, in particular the contribution of the member for Oropouche East, who is absent. And as per usual, that honourable member played to the gallery and put a number of inaccuracies on the record, which I must correct. With respect to this legislation, Madam Speaker, the amendment bill, the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017, I have gone through all of the clauses in this bill, and the only large increase in penalties that is of significance is the penalty for failing to comply with the directions of a traffic warden. And that was indicated, I believe, by a member for Chaguanas East, but he failed to understand the context. But I really need to speak about the member for Oropouche East and the political mischief that he put into the system. And let me start with the requirement for seat belts, which was introduced by Act number 226 of 1994, introduced by yours truly as Minister of Works and Transport 13 years ago. So it has been the law of Trinidad and Tobago that drivers of motor vehicles are required to wear seat belts for, actually it's 23 years ago that I introduced that act. 23 years ago, not 13.
What life is it?
I'll tell you. And we'll come to that. I will explain that. So at every point that the People's National Movement has made adjustments to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, there has been a paradigm shift in culture and in behavior.
Yes, sir.
The requirement for child restraints, I was particularly disappointed in the song and dance that we were treated to by the member for Oropouche East. Carrying on, no, but what I found terrible, Madam Speaker, was that he carried on at a rate about the requirement for a booster seat, which is required for a child between the ages of 4 and 5. And that requirement for a booster seat was introduced with other requirements for child restraints by Act number 5 of 2010 in April 6, 2010, again by yours truly as Minister of Works and Transport. And my memory tells me that the member for Oropouche East was a member of Parliament in April of 2010. My memory also tells me that when I piloted that particular amendment to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act in 2010, just before the general election, it received the unanimous acclamation of the House of Representatives and all present voted for it, including all members of the UNC at the time.
Shameful.
It is shameful and shocking that we have had a requirement on our law books for 7 years for booster seats for children between the ages of 4 and 5. And yet the member for Oropouche East will come into this parliament today,
Again.
7 years later, and quarrel and say, poor people can't afford to buy a booster seat. 7 years, including the entire 5 years and 3 months of the UNC government, that law was in effect for a booster seat. It's shameful. The Breathalyzer Act, Madam Speaker, again I had the honor and the privilege to introduce Act number 19 of 2007, amending the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act as Minister of Works and Transport once again, introducing the breathalyzer into Trinidad and Tobago, and subsequent to the passage of that act in 2007, we trained the technical personnel and we acquired the breathalyzers and we fully implemented that law in 2009. And you'll be very interested to learn, Madam Speaker, if one looks at the statistics for road traffic fatalities since the introduction of the breathalyzer under a PNM administration in 2009, and again I had the honor to be the minister in charge of that legislation. In 2009 there were 222 road traffic fatalities, and after the introduction and implementation of the breathalyzer in 2009, that number systematically decreased down to 206 in 2010, 181 in 2011, down to the present day, 2016, of 135. A 40% reduction in road traffic fatalities since the introduction of the breathalyzer by the People's National Movement government. And therefore it is a fallacy. It's a fallacy to say that the introduction of laws will not result in a behavioral change. It is simply not true. The statistics speak for themselves. We went from 222 road deaths in 2009 before the implementation of the breathalyzer to 135 in 2016. And I must compliment, there's a particular individual in San Fernando in the magistrate's court who seems to have an interest in this matter and is very diligent in dealing with transgressors.
Absolutely.
And certainly his actions and the actions of others in the judicial system have been responsible, together with us as a legislature, in the reduction of fatalities from 222 to 135. The other thing I found shocking was that the member for Oropouche East, who claims to have a law degree, who alleges that he attended the Hugh Wooding Law School.
Really?
You can have a piece of paper, You don't have to attend,
certainly
You could have a certificate, you don't have to sit the exam,
Check the smile on Naparima face.
But the gentleman indicates that he has a law degree. I'm not going to argue with him. I'm not going to argue with him. He alleges he was called to the bar. I'm not going to argue with him. Well, I never see him in any foul thief case. But let's forget that. Clause 9 of the amendment bill before us, Oropouche East was upset over Clause 9 of the amendment bill, which seeks to amend the liability with respect to the owner of a motor vehicle as opposed to a driver. But it is regrettable and shameful and shocking,
But not surprising.
that in carrying on and ranting and raving about this clause, which reads as follows, that the owner of the motor vehicle is responsible for any breach of this act, that the Honorable Learned Attorney from Oropouche East forgot to read the last few lines. And I shall read the last few lines into the record, and then for the benefit of the Honorable Gentleman, I'll explain what it means. The last few lines are, the owner of a motor vehicle is responsible for any breach of this act or those written laws which involves the use of his motor vehicle. So far, so good. That's what he was ranting and raving about. But he forgot these words. And which is imputable to him as the owner. Does the honorable gentleman understand the meaning of the word imputable? No. It means that you have to be responsible. You have to have control over the person who is using the motor vehicle. In other words, you must have, of your own free will, given the motor vehicle to someone, or you are in the car and allowing another person to drive it, or you have taken responsibility for another person driving the vehicle. And that is trite law, Madam Speaker. That is trite. How could he not see those words? Imputable to him as the owner. It is not a whimsical clause. It is not an open-ended clause. It is circumscribed by the words imputable to him as the owner. And therefore, Madam Speaker, the only clause that I myself would require the government, of which I am a proud part, to give consideration to, is proper training for the traffic wardens, because you are now elevating the traffic warden's status to that similar to a police officer in terms of the failure of a driver to obey the instructions of a traffic warden. Where currently the fine is $300, it is now being increased to $10,000, which is similar to the fine that is imposed on someone if they disobey a police officer. So I would expect government, we will ensure that the traffic wardens who will implement this new law will be adequately trained, will receive training at least comparable to that of a police officer in the enforcement of our traffic laws. And there's nothing else in here, Madam Speaker. Everything else is either in the existing law or is simply a minor modification of the existing law. And what I find also shocking is the amnesia on the part of honorable members opposite. Because in 2013, with all that gallery and grand charge, Madam Speaker, in 2013, the previous government amended the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. They amended Section 42 to increase the fines for a breach of Section 42 from $500 to $700.50. They a breach of Section 62 from $4,000 to $6,000, a 50% increase. For a breach of Section 70, which is to deal with the use of alcohol, they increased the fines from $8,000 and $15,000 to $12,000 and $22,500. That
was 2015.
No, it's them that did it.
Yeah.
2013. This is the Finance Act of 2013. It's themselves. And Section 72A2. They increased the fines from $8,000 to $12,000 and $15,000 to $22,500 respectively.
70B.
70B5, they went from $8,000 to $12,000. 70C6C, they went from $8,000 to $12,000. 70C6D, they went from $15,000 to $22,500. 70E1 or L, they went from $8,000 to $12,000 and $15,000 to $22,000. And Section 90 from $2,000 to $3,000. So, Madam Speaker, that is just political hypocrisy on their part.
It's terrible.
Political hypocrisy.
Terrible.
Very few new offenses have been created here. The booster seat has been around for 7 years. 7 years. And yet you come in this parliament and try to fool poor people into thinking that this PNM administration is introducing child restraints on booster seats for the first time. Vast majority of these offenses have been in law for 20 years. But yet you want to come in this parliament and tell the public about the things that the PNM is doing when it is simply not true. So, Madam Speaker, I really do not understand what honorable members have been spending all this time talking about. I went through every single clause, and there are minor adjustments here and there. Some penalties have been reduced. Some had custodial sentences which have been taken away. Yes, some custodial sentences, prison sentences have been removed and replaced with a fine. That is a positive, that's not a negative. Exactly. And then the red light system. It is used in every developed country. You have a red light system, a traffic camera system. How could one ask where you go put these things? Where they go put it on a back road?
You call him ask?
No, how could one ask?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry if it came across a different way, by the way. How could one ask where you go put these things? So, in any serious country, you expect us to put a red light camera on Oyo or some little back road where it have 2 cars passing every hour? No, Madam Speaker. It is clearly those intersections which have a history of accidents, a high volume of traffic, a high record of traffic violations, a high level of risk. Obviously, if you drive through any developed country, I've just come from Europe, Madam Speaker, and as you drive through, the GPS systems that you have now will tell you when you are approaching a red light camera. It will come up on your screen and it will give you a warning. Red light camera system 500 meters away. It will tell you what the speed is, and if perchance you might be a little over the limit, you slow down and you go through. But it happens like every 5 kilometers, every 10 kilometers. It's not every single traffic light that you have this thing on. Why on earth would anybody propose or presume that in Trinidad and Tobago we're going to put a camera system on every single traffic light? It's an absurd. Yes. Why would we put a red light?
Calculating the mathematics to $500 million.
It's an absurdity, Madam Speaker. So that this is just a natural progression. This law that we are debating today is just a natural progression and evolution of the motor vehicle and road traffic system. It is simply following in the line of safety measures that have been introduced. As I said, seat belts, child restraints, breathalyzer. I heard the Attorney General talk about testing for drugs, and also we have the introduction of speed detection devices. Now we're going to have red light cameras and so on. We're simply evolving and becoming a more sophisticated society. And as the record shows, as you introduce these reforms, you have improvements in driver behavior, reduction in road fatalities, and all in all, a better Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I wish to make a few points on the bill. I understand the need to have strong sanctions against those who violate the law. And I think most right-thinking citizens will understand that if there are laws and you break the laws, there should be a cost for breaking the law. But like everything else, there must be some logic to it. There must also be some kind of rationale which justifies it. And there must be some proportionality in relation to other laws and in relation to violations and the consequent sanctions. And I am not saying that the law is illogical. There is a lot of logic to it, but there are things here that can be a little disconcerting. I am not saying that there is no rationale for what is going on. And I heard the member for Diego Martin East, I don't know why he was a little agitated today. I mean, it's a parliament. And, well, because, so our point of view is really to express our point of view. Okay. No, we do not speak untruths on this side. But when I came in the parliament, you were a little agitated. So, but we have no big quarrel. We have some we have issues that we want to raise in the bill. And I want to say something about the bill, though, and its antecedents. And rather than say it from my own memory, I will use the report of the Auditor General for the financial year 2016. And the Auditor General in his department, they are quite succinct on page 39, where they say that on June 24th, 2010, Cabinet agreed to the construction of a head office and an access center at Frederick Settlement, Caroni, for the proposed motor vehicle authority. Secondly, the National Insurance Property Development Company, NIPDEC, was later appointed as the executing agency, and a $339 million fixed-rate bond was issued to finance the project for construction of the head office and access center, and 6 access centers. So this was a project that involved physical infrastructure, laws, as well as technological evolution. And the annual transfers of 17 billion plus from the ministry were made to NIPDEC, this is every year, with effect from the financial year 2013 when this began. A status report as at February 2016 revealed that the total project cost was 275 billion 973 million dollars. That the construction of the Frederick Settlement Head Office and Access Center had been completed and the keys for the facility were ready for handover to the ministry. So this was done. It was done lower than the bond that was raised. It was ready and finished. The Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Bill, however, 2014, introduced in Parliament on 19th November 2014, lapsed on June the 17th, 2015. I remember that bill because I made a contribution to it. In this Parliament, I was in the other place, but I did make a contribution to it. As such, the proposed Motor Vehicle Authority has not been legally established via the requisite Act of Parliament and therefore has not yet formally come into existence. And the building is now occupied by the Transport Division. Now, this is important because it really explains how we are now here, and we take the Attorney General at his word, which is that he said that the bill that we brought was too all-encompassing, and it tried to do too much in a single bill, and therefore it was cumbersome. And what he has tried to do alternatively is to take the view of doing sections or pieces at a time in order to get the ultimate result that we were seeking to do, which was an overhaul of the system, technologically driven system, a system rooted in laws, and a system that was efficient and effective and had the human resource capability and the physical infrastructure in order to do that well. Now, having said that, I said that we could not in 2014 be doing that in Parliament and come in 2017 and say we are opposed to what the AG is doing. So the question does arise, what are we concerned about? If there is some continuity, even though there is a difference in approach, what is it that we are concerned about? And I will mention a few things that we are concerned about. Okay? The 2017 bill that is being debated now seeks to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches. And it says so at the outset of the bill. It seeks to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system. It seeks to provide for a demerit point system. And all of these were in the 2014 legislation. There is no difference here, therefore, in terms of intent, and there is no difference in terms of objective. What I would say, though, is that notwithstanding the Attorney General's statement that basically they were taking a piecemeal approach, and I do not mean that in any derogatory way. He's saying that he's basically dealing with it segment by segment. Ultimately, it will attain the holistic approach that he will eventually seek to attain. The problem I have here is whether, in fact, such as we have done here in this bill, or such as the AG is doing here in this bill, is sufficient in two ways. One, in terms of what it includes and how it includes them, and secondly, by what it leaves out, and therefore what it does not contain in the bill. And I feel that it is an important enough point for the Attorney General to address when he makes his winding up, and I shall be grateful if he would indicate whether in fact this bill does in fact include enough of what it should include at this point in time, and whether in fact a lot of what it leaves out does not create for us a problem that might come to haunt us at some particular time. The second point that I wish to make about the bill is that I don't know how much we brought the bill in 2014, but there's a time lapse between 2014 and 2017. And I don't know if the Attorney General, I don't remember him saying it at the beginning, in his initial presentation, whether he had consultations on this. And I imagine you would have to talk with the Maxi Taxi Association, the Law Association. And I know that the Attorney General did say that you met with the Law Association, but I don't know how much consultation there was. And I would think that if you want laws to be effective, you would want people to understand your thinking, your rationale, your logic, your intention, the degree to which this thing is proportional and reasonable, and you would want to get buy-in in the bill, because, I mean, that is how laws work. You don't impose laws on people. You get them to understand the objective of it, and you then engage them in a certain way. Now, this bill also deals with a number of pieces of legislation. For instance, there are things like the motor vehicles and road traffic regulations, the road traffic prohibited parking order, the private motor cars parking places order, the public stands motor omnibuses parking order. And the question is, I mean, does the establishment of this piece of legislation and its eventual passage in both houses of Parliament, does it affect these others? And how does it affect it? Or what is the relationship between these various pieces of legislation and this particular bill, and what does it mean for the citizen? I think that is something that the AG might want to address also in his winding up, in his closing. Another issue that I want to flag is the issue of the powers of the minister. Now, don't get me wrong, executive is accountable to the Parliament. That is true, but you cannot have ministers operating without executive authority. And I understand that a minister needs to, whoever is the minister, and I'm talking about the office, needs to have some kind of flexibility, some kind of authority in order to exercise that executive authority. But there are many instances, for instance, where it says the minister may from time to time by order do so and so. And I think that that is something we need to look at. You know, is that the right way? And should you come here with negative resolution? Should you come here with affirmative resolution? Should we consider those kinds of issues? So, for instance, the minister may from time to time by order add any traffic violation to the 9th schedule and prescribe in relation to that traffic violation a fixed penalty not exceeding $5,000. So that the minister may vary just like that, and the parliament is not part of it. As I said, I am not trying to interfere with the concept of executive authority. I am just flagging the issue that it is by order that these things are done. Having said that, I do want to say that there are instances in which the police commissioner also has the authority to, is it the police? Yes. Police commissioner does have some authority as well, and I understand that. But I think that it is something that we need to clarify in terms of this particular bill. And I want to make a point. I think some of my colleagues on this side have made it, and that has to do with, is the real intention of the bill, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, is the real intention of the bill a taxation bill, that is to say, a bill that generates, that creates the conditions for generating revenue from tax violation, and together with that, do you have a situation where because of that, the fines imposed are too high? And not in all instances. I mean, the Minister of Finance indicated that that certain amendments were made before in 2013 and fines were increased. And what he has said is true. But can we justify, for instance, and I do have a problem with the fine of $10,000 for not following the instruction of traffic warden. Now, I feel that is problematic. You are creating a new group there that are not part of the public service system. I don't know what is the level of accountability that is required. I don't know to what extent there can be interference in the contractual hiring process of these people, and therefore how these things can be used. And I am a person who am very alert when it comes to how you interfere with institutions and how you create institutions and how you address the question of power relations with those institutions, because of how it can ultimately affect constitutional issues, how it can ultimately affect the rights of individual citizens, and how power can be abused in the system. And as I said, I am not accusing anybody of anything, but I think that this is something that we have to be careful about. We cannot have people who are contracted officers simply going about the place and charging you $10,000 if they give you an instruction and somehow they feel that you have not followed that instruction. I think this is something that is worthy of consideration and something that we should pay attention to, and we should try to understand, we should try to understand why someone would be uncomfortable with that particular issue or clause in the bill of giving that kind of authority to a traffic warden. The minister mentioned, that's to say the member for Diego Martin Northeast, mentioned that they are going to put them through some kind of training program. And he said that simply by way of signaling that he might want an amendment to that particular clause in the bill. But I think it is something that needs consideration beyond the issue of training. Do you want to put that authority and that level of fining power in the hands of someone who is not a police officer or designated for the purpose by the authority of the public service? Now, the other thing that I want to mention here, besides those 5 points that I raised, is the issue of the Transport Commissioner and the office. And I don't know how these traffic wardens are going to operate and how they are going to be aligned to which office, or how when you give fines they are going to operate. And I know that the Transport Commissioner's office also has the authority to impose fines and to act within the law in this particular bill. But when you read the Auditor General's report again from 2016, and I look at page 55 under Transport Commissioner, Ministry of Works and Transport, I see that the Auditor General and his staff say several constraints were encountered in an attempt to verify the accuracy of figures reflected on the statement of receipts and disbursements, and the revenue records were not properly maintained as required by Financial Regulation 55. Details are as follows. Machine-generated receipts issues were faded and illegible in some cases. Cash transactions were recorded on numerous loose pages which were not filled in chronological sequence. They were strewn at various locations within the office wherever space was found, such as under counters and in the storeroom. Monthly cumulative totals were not recorded in the cash book for each of the 43 items of revenue. A difference of 15 million $600,891 was noted between the total revenue on the Treasury card of the 138 billion plus statement and the statement of receipts and disbursements of 123,216. This is a difference of 15 billion. I said million at first. It is $15 billion that are not reconciled in these records of the Transport Commissioner. This is in the year 2016. So I'm saying that it's one thing to try to raise revenue, and it's another thing to get the accuracy and to actually get the receipts. So it's one thing is collecting the money, secondly, making sure that that is accurate, thirdly, balancing the books. And this is the system that we have, certainly in the Transport Commissioner's office. So, Madam Speaker, I have simply raised some of the issues that I think that need to be addressed. I hope the Attorney General will respond to some of them. I noted that several of the ministers on the other side, speakers on the other side, said that this bill is a solution to a lawless society. And I do agree that we have a problem of lawlessness in the society. I do agree that we have a problem of enforcement of laws in the society. And I think that we do have a problem of trying to ensure that we are a law-abiding society, and that the key to that is the business of enforcing the laws. But that does not mean that you need to make the laws necessarily harsher or more punitive. Okay, there is a difference between enforcement and an enforcement system that works and gets the results and achieves the objectives stated by some of the ministers of changing behavior, and a system in which you simply increase the fines or strengthen the penalties because you think that itself will be the deterrent. You know, and this is I mean, we could take this to any aspect of crime in the society, and I will not go there now, but any aspect of crime, and you have strong laws, you may have strong laws, yet at the same time, the lack of enforcement is what in fact causes the problem. So that is where we need to spend more of our attention rather than on the increase in penalties. Now, several of the ministers and the member for Diego Martin Northeast also raised that when I came in, the issue of behavior change, behavior modification. And it's not, laws do change behavior, that is true. If you have a law, it will help to change people's behavior. They might be much more responsive. But the most important thing in that is whether there is vigilance in relation to the law. That's the first thing. And secondly, whether there is, again, enforcement and some predictability about the enforcement. For instance, one of the reasons people commit crimes in this country is because they feel that 9 times out of 10 they can get away with it. And unless you have a system that can ensure that people feel that 9 times out of 10 you will not get away with it, you are not going to have the behavior modification. And I wish to reinforce that point. This is also being touted on the other side as a crime fighting tool. Well, I can see, you can, if you extend that argument as far as it can reach, you could probably justify the argument. But I don't think you can justify the argument in the context of the limited reach of this law in relation to traffic violations and the series of violations that are identified. And there is no link, direct link, although it is possible by managing traffic laws you can deal with other forms of criminality. There is no direct link between the management of traffic laws such as these and the being able to deal with the issue of crime fighting per se in the society. I think we have to look more generally at the issue of rewards and sanctions. I think in any society you have to have incentives. The insurance companies understand that. For instance, if they find a pool of people who do not make accidents, they reduce the premium that that pool of people has to pay. So for instance, if they find that women are better drivers, or women between the age of so and so, they are more careful drivers, they will reduce the premium for them. Or if they find people of a certain age or people with a certain length of time of having a license tend to be safer, non-accident prone drivers, they may again introduce rewards for those people. And again, your system has to be one of both rewards and sanctions. And a society of rewards and sanctions, just like a system of rewards and sanctions in a company or in the public service, really works better than a system of sanctions only. All right? And a system of sanctions without enforcement or without the predictability of likely enforcement of the law, more rather than less, is not going to make any difference in terms of the observance of laws or the achievement of the objectives. The final point I want to make in relation to this, a general point, is that we must not forget that when we make laws, that we operate within a constitution, and that this constitution is one that operates in the context in which a lot of rights are given to the individual as a citizen. That is to say, citizenship has some value, and the Constitution gives value to that by yielding a lot of rights to the citizen. And therefore, we must be careful when we make laws again that we do not create the conditions where we are likely to deprive the individual citizen of rights that he or she should feel that they should reasonably enjoy. And I simply say that as a general point. I don't want to use any specific example. And I am not accusing the Attorney General of bringing a bill that deprives people of their constitutional rights, but I'm really raising the issue of balance in the making of laws and in the practice of laws in our society. I will not be much longer, Madam Speaker. I've made the points that I mentioned before, which is that the issue of the power of the minister needs to be looked at. I asked the question of how many pieces of legislation are being affected by this. I asked the question about consultation, and I asked the question about the proportionality of some of the sanctions, some of the fines that are involved here, and I did raise the issue of the traffic wardens and basically indicated that it's not only a question of training, it's a question of how they are hired, how they function, whom they report to, and I raised the question of money and how not just the issue of whether this is a bill simply to raise taxes or to raise revenue, but a bill also which may lead to lack of accountability of some of the receipts of the revenue, and I use the particular case of the Transport Commissioner's Office. There are other issues here that are by no means minor. For instance, the assessment of a person's physical ability to drive and to be able to manipulate a vehicle. I don't know what this means for people who are disabled or who are handicapped in some way, and I don't know how that judgment is made by a police officer or by a traffic warden. I would think that what you would require is some kind of medical assessment of the fitness to drive, and once that is satisfied, nobody else should really interfere in the process. And I am concerned about that too, because I think there could be a violation of rights of certain categories of citizens, and I don't think that that's what we want to do in the bill. Another argument which has been raised here, I think by the Attorney General himself might have been in passing, the issue of the management of traffic. I think you raised, yeah.
Now 30 minutes have now expired. You're entitled to 15 more minutes. In no way meaning to restrain you, just to let you know that at 6 o'clock we take the definite matter. So you may proceed.
I will complete before 6 p.m., Madam Speaker. The whole issue of traffic management, I want to say categorically that the issue of traffic management cannot be addressed simply by laws. That has to be dealt with. That has to be dealt with by, first of all, a decentralized approach to.
Yeah, the member for Caroni Central, please. Please continue, member.
It has to be dealt with by a decentralized approach to development in the first place, which would then create the condition of many poles or centers of growth and human, commercial, and economic activity and business and public administration. And on the basis of that, and on the basis of the principle that people might want to work closer to where, they live, and that people might want to hire people who live closer to where they live simply for logistical ease. what will then happen is that you'll have a dispersal of traffic in a different kind of way. And what that then also means is that it would require a different system of governance, which brings government closer to the people in addition to central management of an economy or polity or society, that then allows the society to function in a certain way, because you need things for the whole society and you also need things for sections or regions of the society depending on what their assets and liabilities are in those various parts of the country. So I want to say that to use this piece of legislation as a solution provider for the ease of traffic and for traffic management is not a very sound argument, and it is not something that I would push or pursue. And in fact, I don't think it will add that much value to the business of traffic management at all. There may be one or two more points that I can make, but I think that I've said enough on this particular subject and this particular bill. As I said, what I try to identify are those areas in which I have a concern or difference of opinion. And as I said, there is some continuity between the 2014 legislation and this one. But the vast, vast difference is that we went for a holistic bill that was very comprehensive in nature. And what the Attorney General has done was to segment the bill in a certain way, and I am asking the question whether this is enough at this time and whether many of the things that they left out might not cause some problems as we go forward. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we've sat here for hours, both last week and this week, and I've listened diligently to the contributions by all, and in particular my colleagues on the other side, to really try and get an understanding, Madam Speaker, so during my contribution I could try to explain to the right-thinking members of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago what exactly it is that is detaining us here during the course of this debate. I've heard the most interesting, I was going to say ridiculous, submissions that this is really a bill to raise income and an attempt at taxation. Those on the other side, they've been going on and on and on about, these fines have gone up and these fines are only going up so you could raise income, etc. And I've struggled with it, to be honest, Madam Speaker, and I will apologize to the right-thinking citizens of Trinidad and Tobago because I just can't seem to understand the concept. The only way a fine becomes payable, the only way any citizen of Trinidad and Tobago becomes susceptible to having to put any money out of his or her pocket to pay a fine is if you break the law. So all we've been hearing from the opposition, the vast majority of it on the other side, is, why are you doing this for the poor people? People are suffering outside there and you're increasing fines. Completely skipping over, Madam Speaker, that the only way you become susceptible to having to pay a fine is by breaking the law. So they're saying, right? And they keep going on now about the spiteful police and the most objectionable suggestion being made about the behavior of the public servants who are traffic wardens, that they will now utilize the fact that there's a higher fine to engage in corruption. So what is being suggested, unfortunately, by those on the other side about public servants is that because we've increased, traffic wardens will now go to someone and say, you've broken a red light, you're parking in a wrong zone, you're susceptible now to a fine of $1,000, and God alone knows what it is they're implying. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the public servants of Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular the traffic wardens, we, the government, would like to say, we have faith in you, the public servants, to do what is right, and to carry out the law. Ignore those on the other side and the allegations they make with regard to your ethics, your integrity, and judging everyone else, maybe, Madam Speaker, by the standards that they apply. Another submission we heard a short while ago with respect to the traffic wardens is interference with hiring. I heard my learned colleague for Diego Martin Northeast talk about political hypocrisy. That is immediately what came to mind. Interference with hiring. Madam Speaker, there has been no instance in the last 20 months with respect to traffic wardens and the hiring of traffic wardens and there being interference by the political directorate. Madam Speaker, what this legislation is about, and again, the Honourable Member for Diego Martin Northeast made the point, and I'd like the opportunity, Madam Speaker, through you to reinforce the point. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago do not buy into the constant fear-mongering. Do not buy into the misinformation and the misleading comments being made, unfortunately, by my friends on the other side. There are no new offences being created. So we heard it in the other place. We've heard a little bit of a repeat here. Fortunately, those on the other side have not pushed the point. But citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, there is no creation of any new offences via this act. It's the implementation, and I'll get to that in a short while, Madam Speaker. But we heard the Honourable Member for Diego Martin Northeast say in his contribution that under him, he introduced the booster seats.
7 years ago.
7 years ago. This has been the law of Trinidad and Tobago, and it was implemented.
He voted for
and I remind the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, now that the member for Oropouche East is actually in the chamber, at the time when this was created 7 years ago, i.e. that booster seats became the law, it was passed unanimously. And the member for Oropouche East was there. And at the time, he didn't talk about it having any effect on poor people. So the constant politicization of this, and all this is an increasing of fines, and fines that only become applicable when you infringe the law. When you break the law is when you become susceptible to these increased fines. So I stand here, Madam Speaker, to assure the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago there's no need to be fearful. Abide by the law, and I hear Naparima with his spinning. His jaw is constantly spinning, Madam Speaker. Spinning left, spinning right, spinning left, spinning right. There is no creation of new offences here. Don't break the law and you will not become susceptible to it. Don't break the red light. You know how many deaths take place on an annual basis, Madam Speaker, by people breaking the red light? I don't think there's a single driver in Trinidad and Tobago who drives safely that as the light turns from red to green, takes off straight away. And that is because we all know that there is the real possibility that someone will be breaking the red light. So what we are doing as legislators, and I call upon my colleagues on the other side to join in the responsible move. We will increase the fines for those who break the law. So if you break the red light, then you will pay an increased fine. One of the ways, Madam Speaker, and there's a direct correlation between it in terms of discouragement of breaking the law, is to increase the fines. This law, really the inception of this act, the Motor Vehicle Act, is an old act. So every so often, responsible legislators must look at the current day value of money and increasing the fines. And Madam Speaker, it is our respectful submission to the population of Trinidad and Tobago that there is absolutely nothing wrong with the proposed increases in fines. Stay within the confines of the law, and if you do so, you make it safer for everybody. Wear your seat belts. Put your young toddlers and children in booster chairs. Do not have your children on your lap. Don't break the red lights while driving, as I'm reminded. So, Madam Speaker, I will continue in a short while because I know we're going to break for the matter on the urgent matter. The main point to make this side of my submission, Madam Speaker, is there's no creation of new offences. The increased fines are completely proportional and acceptable. And most importantly, you only become susceptible to these fines if you break the law. So citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, don't break the law.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I thank the House for granting our request to have this matter discussed at this time. And that is the failure of government to provide adequate resources and relief in a timely, effective, and efficient manner to alleviate the hardship, suffering, anguish, and distress of the population in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Bret. Madam Speaker, in its failure to deliver to citizens at this time, where so many of them are in great need, the government has proved once again that it is the most incompetent government ever in Trinidad and Tobago. I got on my phone at 2:06 p.m. A message, I guess, a text that was put out by the Trinidad and Tobago Ministry of Works at MOWT.gov.tt. And it says, please be advised that we are experiencing traffic congestion on the CRH, which I think is the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway, and the UBH, Uriah Butler Highway. One lane was conned off. One lane was conned off. C-O-N-N-E-D. In the vicinity of Caroni Bridge. We could not even get, yes, it's conmanship. We could not even get a correct notification for the Ministry of Works. Sorry. And this has been what has been happening before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. Madam Speaker. The multimedia desk of the published 23rd June, that is the day at 2:23 p.m. from the Express, reads as follows, Madam. There appears to be a flood of incorrect information coming out of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management regarding whether there is water on the highway near the Caroni overpass and the Caroni Savannah Road. At around noon, the ODPM issued a terse Facebook advisory stating, please be advised, the rumors of flooding on the Uriah Butler Highway and near the Caroni cremation site is false. What? This is what the ODPM put out today. The Express article continues that we are liaising with persons firing false reports to retract such reports. An official release will be posted soon, noting that the water levels are visible on the Caroni Savannah Road in the vicinity of the Uriah Butler Highway South. Highway Patrol and Ministry of Works and Transport is monitoring water levels due to heavy rainfall at this time. This set off, the article carries, this set off a storm of negative responses on social media from people actually using the highway at the time. These motorists began posting images showing flooding on the highway shoulder, heavy rain and traffic. Some challenged the information by posting their own real-time images and videos showing vehicles traveling through floodwaters. Madam Speaker, what has been happening prior to the storm hitting, during the time and thereafter, has been misinformation and no plan of preparedness for dealing with Tropical Storm Bret. What we experienced just prior to the storm were government officials saying, do not panic, don't worry, everything is fine. In the meantime, the Prime Minister is missing in action, working very hard in Tobago at Mount Irving playing golf. Very hard. And then tells us a story that the trajectory of the storm was that the worst would be for Tobago but then it turned back down south. I've never heard of any storm coming across the Atlantic to the Caribbean, going up the road and turn back down. It goes this way from the Atlantic across. It goes northwest.
Yes.
It goes northwest. It doesn't go north where Tobago is, of us, and then come back down south. So, the government needs to get its feet on the ground. And my colleague talked about disaster tourism, where we see government officials coming with hands swinging, a slew of camera photographers and so on, and nothing, bearing nothing at a time when people are in greatest need. I went through, yes, I'm saying that, Siparia. You should come down south. You see, you all don't come. So you do not know what is happening. You do not care what is happening. And you forget that there are PNM supporters in south as well.
Go with your credit card.
So south of Trinidad doesn't have any PNM supporters. You think it's only UNC supporters, but you're very wrong. Maruga Tableland was so badly hit. Represented by a PNM MP in this parliament.
Missing in action.
Missing in action. Missing in action, man. And so,
I'm from Aruga.
Madam Speaker.
I'm from Aruga.
Member for Naparima, I'm on my legs. Member for Siparia.
I thank you, madam, and I thank God, therefore, for the MP for Princestown and the Princestown Regional Corporation and the member for Aruka Boloni, madam. I need
members, I've said, members. Excuse me. The speaker needs no protection. As I've said before, I know this has been a very stressful week for members on both sides. That is no excuse for us to be disrespectful of this House and to disrespect the standing orders. I would ask members to restrain themselves and allow the member for Siparia to continue the presentation. Any other member will be allowed to join in response. Member for Siparia.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm saying, today, when questions were asked from the government about giving assistance by way of grants from the Ministry of Social Development and so on, the bottom line was that not a single grant has been given out. That was the bottom line. And today we are into the fourth day. And it reminds me of what the government from 2015 has been saying. They're reviewing and they're auditing. They're still reviewing and assessing. So when you are there, you're on the ground, as I said, disaster tourism, you're coming with the cameras, you're taking the pictures, but you have nothing to give. Again, I want to thank the MPs and the UNC councillors who in various areas contributed, put up, and were able to deliver some hampers. I want to thank all the good Samaritans who also have been sending and asking to give assistance, but it is not enough. It is definitely not enough. And when we asked earlier today questions about what was being done, what has been done, what has the government done so far? We see since September 2015 to the present, what has the government done for reducing severe flooding in areas so prone? We can get a good example of what they've done or not done from the budget documents that come to this parliament. So where it is that the National Programme for Upgrade of Drainage Channels, out of the money allocated, only 15% was used up for the whole of 2016. 15%. It's at page 94. You can go into the books for the budget and you will find it there. When it comes to the construction of a reservoir and associated water treatment facility at Ravinsab, Caparo, member for Caroni, East, Caparo and that entire area. La Hoqueta, speak of La Hoqueta Talparo too. La Hoqueta Talparo, flooded out, all El Carmen and all those areas. This would have helped, but what happened? Out of the 25 million allocated in 2016, 7% of that. What? 7%. And then we want to cry that we've done all this work and there's an ongoing program and whatever it is that's happening. for the landslip repair program. It's the same for all the programs. I have it here. But the point is this. The money is allocated in 2016. For budget 2016, which should have been from September 2015 down to September 2016, the monies allocated for these kinds of works, minuscule amount, actually utilized. And then now, when we were told today that not a single grant is being given out, someone had posted up, there were 19 grants. 19 grants that you can access under the Ministry of Social Development. And what a crying shame, 4 days into this flooding and this storm, we cannot be told that one has been given out. I remember when the then Minister of the People, who had to look after matters like these, was Dr. Glenn Ramadasing, and thereafter Christine Nawalu Hussain, MP now for Komodo Manzalina, that when the ministers went out, when people were out on the ground, when you were going and we were going to visit people, their ministry officials were actually on the ground at the same time. They will be there, you will see right away, look, this whole house is gone, man, they need something to eat. They will have the hampers, they'll have the food cards, and they will have them ready and available to give to affected persons on the ground. And so we are seeing that that is not happening. 4 days into this, and we look at the various grants, and then we looked at the midterm review, Madam Speaker. I wonder if you recall, right here in this house, when we did the midterm review earlier this year, we were told that the food price support program was cut by $86.067 million, the food support program. You all remember that? Right here, cut. And why? They were in the process of revisiting and regularizing the administration of the food price support program with a view to ensure efficiency and so on. But today, with the suffering coming from these floods, we cannot get one of these 19 grants being allocated to anyone within any of the ministries. Not one grant, when the question was asked here today, has to be told, they're being assessed, they have to go in the field. Audits. Again, it's like a review, we were told within 3 take months, will now be 3 weeks. But this is emergency relief, Madam Speaker, and therefore a different system needs to be put into place to get speedy relief. I invite persons to come and see what is happening. So, what has the government done from September 2015 to now? I have spent a short time out of the 20 minutes, with 8 I think left, talking about the cuts and the fact that budgeted amounts for 2016 have not been used, that were allocated to deal with drainage, to deal with flood relief and matters like that, were not utilized. For 2017, we will not know until we come back to budget 2018 later this year, in a few months, what was the actual expenditure under each of these heads. So how did the government handle the disaster following in the wake of the storm? So firstly, prior to, don't panic, officials saying don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. Then we were getting misinformation as to what was happening, and then we were hit. So what happened thereafter? The Minister of Communications, speaking for the government, said he was satisfied over government's handling of the situation. Madam Speaker, he may be satisfied, but the citizens of this country are not satisfied with the way the government is handling the relief efforts for citizens. A news poll taken during the week asked, are you satisfied with government's response in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Bret? Madam Speaker, I am not surprised that perhaps for the first time in the longest time, 100% of respondents voted no. They were not satisfied. This is on Wednesday, 11th. 100% of respondents, when asked, are you satisfied with government's response in the aftermath of the storm, said no. In short, government has failed to attempt to coordinate the relief efforts to the thousands of persons. Regional corporations, first responders did try, they were out there, but they were overwhelmed very shortly. Madam Speaker, I went out on Tuesday, I think it was, in the constituency and so on. And for that all those many hours, I did not see one government official, one government vehicle. There were two. Yes, but what was he doing standing, swinging his two hands? Be real. Be real. I talked about disaster tourism on the part of government officials. Walking about and standing about, nothing to hand out. Thank God we had put the money together and we got the hampers and we were distributing them. I did not see any government vehicle on that day. The regional corporation with two small vehicles through that entire Penal Davy Regional Corporation. You could not see any others. Persons marooned. They could not get out of their house, and the regional corporation had no equipment to get them out of that water. They could not come out. Caimans floating in the water. You know, but caiman, whatever, I know there was alligators, but I think that's the wrong word to say, caiman. And you know, I know we are told that those of us from the south, we are like alligators in the Murky Lagoon, you remember that? From the member for Laventille, wherever it was. Alligators in the Murky Lagoon. But Madam Speaker, the people, whether they are from the east or the east, that were so badly hit, whether they are from the south or whichever part of Trinidad and Tobago, they deserve equal treatment in this time. They deserve it. Now, Cabinet has approved $25 million in funding to be dispersed, I'm told, through 3 ministries. And we look at the allocations to the ODPM across the years, Madam Speaker, 3 budgets. You will see for 2014-15, the budgeted amount for ODPM was 67 million. Thereafter, this figure was cut down to 37 million for 15 to 16. And there's been even a further reduction to 20 million for this fiscal year, where there was this major disaster. The question is then, beyond Bret, what happens? Now, when I went to school, we had there was a little thing we used to say June, too soon. July, stand by. August, it's a must. I can see your lips moving, Madam Speaker. We learned this in school. But this is June, and this is just the start. And June is too soon, remember? That's what we learned. This is just the start of this season in which we could get storms and hurricanes and so on, right down until November. And therefore the question now is for government in some way to give the assurance that we will be better prepared as we go along into this very wet season. Are we then, is the Minister of Social Development looking at deployment time of assessing persons? Are we waiting then for people to go into the offices? Are we going to deploy officers in the field so that you can get this done quickly? Will the Minister of Local Government going to review the process for activating shelters? You know, Madam Speaker, the whole fiasco with the shelters. Places were placed on as shelters. I am told these are posted up by the ODPM. And the shelters were not opened on that day. I saw headlines saying non-access in Trinidad, 2 in Tobago. 3 minutes. Non-access in Trinidad, 2 in Tobago. They were not access, Madam Speaker, I'll tell you why. For examples, I can give examples. The Ramai Trace Hindu School was designated as a shelter. But yet in this house I have heard many calls from the member for Parliament as a shelter that, no, Madam Speaker, let me make it very clear. The shelters, I am told, are given out by the ODPM. Let's get that very clear. And they never check in any way. So this is issued at whatever point in time. So the Ramai Trace Hindu is a construction site because we've been asking through the MP here for it to be completed and open. Construction site listed. The Debe Hindu School, the river flooded out the whole school. I don't even know if it's open up to now. Shelters that were just, people just could not go in. Are we going to sit by and say, well, look, is the regional corporation fault and is Kamla fault and is Kamla fault and is the UNC fault? Or are we going to put systems in place from now? I said June too soon. So there is, it may well be, God help us know, but there may well be more to come. Are we going then to deal with how we check those centers and activate them? What is being done about disease control? I think the Minister of Health may have answered today. Hopefully that is taking place with the spraying and so on. And then, is the government going to engage in impact assessment arising from events of earlier this week? I say again, the government needs to put their feet on the ground, It's not good enough to drive in the car, wave through the window and so on. We need to get more proactive action. And at the end of the day, it really falls on the government. They have protested, they have won, as they say they have won, and they are in charge. I call on the government to show that you're in charge and to bring relief to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm very grateful for this opportunity this evening to explain to the nation and those on the other side all that was done and continue to be done as a result of the recent tropical storm Bret that affected Trinidad and Tobago. The ministry and all its officials are busy working because we continue to have some bad weather which will cause more flooding. Thankfully, although I am here in the Parliament, work is being done as I am speaking. At this moment, we're experiencing flash flooding in some areas, Port of Spain and on the highway. Madam Speaker, once the government was aware of the imminent passing of the tropical storm Bret over Trinidad and Tobago, all relevant agencies mobilized to ensure that the population was prepared. Madam Speaker, just to respond to the member for Siparia, who started by saying no work was done in the 2015 to 2016 with the program for drains and so, I just want to indicate that the approximate rainfall over the 30-year average is 350 millimeters. On that said night, we got 156, almost half the amount in just a short space of time. And if box drains would have solved the problem, one place would have never had a problem would have been Siparia. Because just under the pure program alone, which deals with basically box drain and road paving, in Siparia alone, the pure program for the 5 years spent $454,599,000. And if you compare that to Diego Martin West, over the 5-year period, it was $38 million. So I just wanted to say that it is not right.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam Speaker, I just wanted to indicate
Prime Minister, want to quote the figure again?
the pure program spent $454,599,726.66 in Siparia. In Oropouche, was 100.
Minister of Works and Transport. Members, I would like to hear the contributions. I also want to remind members there's no injury time for this motion. Please continue.
Okay, so Madam Speaker, I just wanted to put on the table that box drains and waters couldn't solve the problem that we were faced with the volume of water that came across Trinidad and Tobago. So having said that, what happened in Trinidad? At the Ministry of Works and Transport, on Sunday morning, the team at the ministry mobilized its employees, all the directors. We got together and we started to deploy the equipment in areas that were prone to landslips, fallen trees, and flooding. At 2 o'clock, myself, the Minister of Rural Development, Minister of Communication, the Army Corps, and several other agencies attended a meeting at the ODPM, where we were all briefed as to what was happening and a discussion on all the relevant authorities and ministries' plan of action. Madam Speaker, it is because of proper planning that you compare what happened where we had a storm on Monday night, we had a storm on Monday night into Tuesday, and within hours, sorry.
I am having great difficulty in hearing the contribution. Member for Oropuch East, could you refrain from the display of the newspaper, please? Thank you.
Madam Speaker, within hours, no part of Trinidad was cut off. You compare that to last year, November, where it took us almost a week to get into Madamas in Arima and Matlot. The reason for that, we planned before, we put equipment inside and the equipment clean coming out. Madam Speaker, on that Monday, on that Sunday, all numbers were distributed to all the relevant players, and that was one of the reasons why communication on Tuesday morning was so efficient. Madam Speaker, it is strange that, you know, you get the feeling as the Minister of Works that there are some people who wish this storm was worse.
Yes, yes.
Some people. No, I wouldn't call any names.
Member for Caroni Central, Oropuch East and Couva South. If you all intend to join the debate, I will call upon you all in time. Member for Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what happened within minutes after the storm was declared, the storm warning was called off? Members of the URP, the Ministry of Works, the Regional Corporation, and the Army Corps were out. By 6 o'clock, there were trees being removed from the road, landslips being cleared. Well, Madam Speaker, I don't want to, through you, Madam Speaker, they couldn't clear trees in Siparia because they had flooding. They couldn't clear landslips in these areas because there were no landslips there. On the north coast, there were landslips, and in other areas where there were trees fallen, we dealt with it. Unfortunately, in the areas on the southern side, we had flooding. It doesn't take an engineer to tell you that before you could deal with flooded areas, you have to wait for the water to run off. Right? I don't think a backhoe could go and take out water. And I think what we are accustomed in seeing in Trinidad is contractors mobilizing equipment, running up and down, MPs with tall boots running up and down, and hampers giving out. That have gone on in this country for too long. What we need is to bring some sort of relief. What we did is to bring some
Caroni Central, please don't allow me to rise again. Member for Princess Tong, please don't have me rise again. Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you. You see, Madam Speaker, while we are speaking in the Parliament here, and we are trying to blame people, there are still people underwater outside. And somewhere along the line, we must understand as politicians that we should be seeing about the people rather than trying to cast blame. Because what I am seeing here. Okay. Madam Speaker, what is taking place right now? The equipment in Blantyshires, in Sandy Grande, in Tunapuna, in Sipero River. We have just sent out pumps to the low-lying areas in Siparia, in Sama Bartaria, and no, the Weimar, no. Madam Speaker, you see we are getting a lot about areas being flooded. I was in El Carmen yesterday, and
But you have no respect for my constituency.
you see,
Member for Caroni East, and I must apologize to Member for Caroni Central just now, Member for Caroni East. I would invite you, if it is that you can't contain yourself, to take a little walk and come back. The same thing for Couva South. If you can't contain yourself, I'm sure a little walk will give you the discipline required. Minister of Works and Transport.
Madam Speaker, you see, as the Minister of Works and Transport, in an emergency, I have to be out there. I can't wait to ask the member for Caroni East to accompany me because he might be busy. I have to go out there and bring relief to the people. So I am sorry if the member for Caroni East took offense with me trying to solve the problem in his constituency without him. Madam Speaker, there are a lot of work that is going on in Trinidad and Tobago as we speak. The storm has passed, but there's a lot of work that has to be done. And the Ministry of Works and Transport we are on the ball. Unfortunately, we cannot go into some of the areas where there's flooding until there's a runoff. I just came out from a meeting where we had all the heads, including the people from Siparia, including all the divisions of the Ministry of Works. And I want to give the assurance that this country, after 2 days of facing a storm like that, we are almost back to where we're supposed to be. Madam Speaker, sorry.
Take a little walk and come, please.
Madam Speaker, as Minister of Works and Transport, I have a duty to the citizens who are, at this point in time, still require services from the different agencies. What I want to say, Madam Speaker, at this time is every time Trinidad and Tobago experience heavy rainfall and wind, we always have to deal with disasters, especially flooding. And for those reasons, the Ministry of Works and Transport is embarking on a major flood alleviation program, which includes building codes and detention ponds. Madam Speaker, I just want to remind this population, I have heard some woos on the other side about a flooding alleviation program. Between 2010 and 2015, this country spent a couple $1 million on a Port of Spain flood alleviation program, which was failed by the IDB. Madam Speaker, we must recognize that panicking and passing blame whenever there is a disaster does not help the situation. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Tabaquite.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me just begin by saying that this motion is about the failure of the government to provide adequate resources and relief in a timely, effective and efficient manner to alleviate the hardship, suffering, anguish and distress of the population in the aftermath of Tropical Storm Bret. And nothing has changed since Bret came. The people are in a state of hardship, suffering, anguish and distress in the aftermath. And very little, if any, has been done to bring relief in a timely, effective and efficient manner. And it is really, really, really a shame, Madam Speaker, to see the Minister presenting such a vacuous statement in this House this afternoon to deal with this. Madam Speaker, how ludicrous it is that he can stand there and say that in Siparia they spent $454 million on box drains. Madam Speaker, at an average of $1,000 of a 2x2 box drain, that's 454,000 meters of box drains that you are telling me was built in Siparia. What nonsense! And you expect the people of this country to believe that? Nonsense. Madam Speaker,
Member, there is no need to shout, and maybe if members behave with more decorum, the member for Tabaquite would not have to strain his vocal cords.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister gets up and talks about this is not a time to hand out hampers. That is something part. If he, the Honourable Minister, understood the meaning of hunger and loss and all your food being destroyed, he wouldn't stand up here to talk about hampers being given to people. Today people are very happy to receive a hamper because they have no food, all their food washed away in the kitchens. Madam Speaker, today in this Parliament, the Minister of Works and Infrastructure, in response to questions, said the government's or ministry's action was to wait until the waters subside. Madam Speaker, after 4 days, people are still marooned in their homes. There are pictures on the newspaper today to show it. Madam Speaker, their hygiene needs are affected. Could not the government bring out some dingies and get people out from their homes and put them into centers and give them a hot meal and give them a mattress and make sure that their children had a place to rest their heads at night? This is the uncaring government that you have in the PNM. The uncaring government. Madam Speaker, the minister comes and repeats those. So he had 20 minutes, he couldn't use 10 because he had nothing to say, nothing to tell the people. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister might be a nice individual, I know him, he's a genuine individual in his own way. But Madam Speaker, when he stands up there and makes the vacuous promises that he made and goes back and says we're going to dig this dam and that dam, all he is doing is giving real meaning to the words PNM promises never materialize. Madam Speaker, that's what he's doing. And I'm very sorry. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Social Development, in her answers today said, look, it normally takes 2 to 3 months in order to process a normal application for help. But in an emergency situation, it will take 2 to 3 weeks, and she hopes to get it done in 2 to 3 weeks. What will happen to people in 2 to 3 weeks? This is why we are talking about an efficient system, an effective system, and a timely relief system. Madam Speaker, are people going to starve for these next few weeks? Madam Speaker, the Minister of Housing did not agree this morning in a question with the Honourable former Minister of Housing that it was a good idea to go to areas where problems have occurred and do the filling out of the forms in those areas. Madam Speaker, the people are there and they have problems. You have to reach out to the people. This is not a people-centered government. This is not a citizen-centric government. Madam Speaker, do you know what it means for people to suffer great loss to go and reach out to them? This is the poorest form of governance we have seen in this country in many years. Madam Speaker, after 4 days,
Member for
really...
Yes, Member for Tabaquite, your speaking time has now expired. Member for Laventille West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't want to waste any time on it, but the facts and figures show that they spent $454.5 million in Siparia on box drains and paving in the last 5 years. And every one of those matters should be investigated. If you are denying seeing those box drains now, this requires more attention. And I can recall in 2010-11 when they had floods, $97 million they spent on contractors moving a few truckloads of garbage and rubble out of Diego Martin. These are the facts, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the member for Siparia suggested that I said all the people from South were alligators. That's not the case. Look at the records. I was speaking about the member for Siparia and a certain Ashwa Jack in Tobago.
Member for Cougar South, could you just take a little walk and come back, please? Please.
Them were alligators from the same lagoon because they both could not explain how they arrived at houses and the contractor disappeared since the last election. Madam Speaker, public utilities. I told the member for Siparia was saying she couldn't see a single official. My friend, the Minister of Works, pointed out she was in a picture with Minister of Local Government. Right there, they just can't speak the truth. They just can't speak the truth. Tech was ready for this, well ready. WASA was well ready. Tech had 375 events with line trees falling on lines and power disruptions. And as I speak to you now, I am almost certain they have attended to every single one of them, bringing relief to the people of this country. WASA had 26 incidents, and WASA is also on the job dealing with it, including turbidity in water because of the stirring of the surface water. The Met Services and the ODPM, they must be complemented. They were on top of the system, and the system worked. The system worked. Thank God he spared us the worst excesses of this. And insofar as relief is concerned, I heard the Prime Minister, the member for Siparia say 100%. Well, in today's Express, 100% of the people said that they supported the efforts of Prime Minister Rowley inside every one of them. And Madam Speaker, I heard the member for Siparia untruthfully say not a single grant. The Minister of Social Development explained it takes time to process because there are people who abuse the system. It takes time. And you can't assess anything when the flood waters are high. It's just a matter of common sense. But they are accustomed going around with their donated hampers and fooling people and posturing. That's not what we are about. We are about genuine relief to the people. And they can't find one citizen in this country who is marooned in any house and can't come out and hungry. Not one. That's an exaggeration. That is an exaggeration. Not one they could present. And Madam Speaker, as for food cards, all of them used to have 1,000 food cards in their back pocket. We're not doing that. There's a process for getting them, and we will assess cases and give them as they could. Madam Speaker, let me continue. And there are grants for home repair, food, clothes, furniture, school books. This cabinet announced a special $25 million to support people in this effort. And if more is required, more will come. Public buildings are now open. Courthouse, school, hospital, everything open. So we are bringing relief according to the plan to the people of this country. And Madam Speaker, I want to say that I am thanking the people of Trinidad and Tobago for their understanding that this was a natural disaster and that relief is on the way. So Madam Speaker, I support and I will take the opportunity to congratulate the Prime Minister, who we truthfully know was on the telephones to us and in other ways communicated with every single one of his ministers. And as the people of Trinidad and Tobago recognize in this survey today, he did not put on boots and go out there and make a mockery of himself. He did what he had to do as leader, and he had faith and confidence in his ministers, and we all did the job. Madam Speaker, we all did the job.
Member for Chaguanas West.
I now understand why you were removed from the Ministry of Works portfolio. You do not have a grasp of the issues. And I understand the vacuousness of the, as indicated, of the current Minister of Works and Transport, because his head is in South Korea looking for the ship, the Emerald Flower. South Korean ship is seeking to replace, that is being handpicked. Madam Speaker, when you deal with this issue of flooding, the Honourable Minister of Works spoke about that we wasted money in seeking to bring about a flooding alleviation in Port of Spain. It was a loan of $120 million by the IDB. They have cut that down because they do not have the capacity or leadership to deal with the flooding problem in Port of Spain. And that therefore they have reduced that $120 million US to $15 million US. And the reason why you have flooding, not because of the rainfall, it's because you did no work, both you and your predecessor did no work, Madam Speaker. When you look at the rivers in South Trinidad, the rivers in South Trinidad, no work done. The South Oropouche study by Royal Haskellin and the recommendation, no work done. You look at the Caroni River Basin study, another Royal Haskellin study, no work done. And then, of course, Madam Speaker, the Caparo Mamoral Retention Reservoir. You're not going to do retention pond when you ought to have done a retention reservoir. The designs were done. The designs were completed. The residents of Caparo Mamoral, we had discussions with them. They were being relocated. Now, that if you had done the work, then Caparo would not have flooded. 2 years, you do nothing. Designs, everything done. Now you come with some farcical recommendation of detention ponds. Madam Speaker, you look throughout the system. We have to do the work. The dredging, the desilting during the dry season. Look at the highway now. The reason why the highway is flooding is because no work was done by the ravine created by the former Minister of Works, Franklin Khan. No desilting, no dredging, so that when the water, that sheet of water, Madam Speaker, the sheet of water that came down from Talparo, Brazil, and into St. Helena, El Carmen, Las Lomas, and heading down into Warrenville, will ultimately find its way into the Caroni swamp. But if you had anticipated, then you would have dredged that whilst the water was away, not whilst it is currently flooding. But no, you touring. You like a West Indies team, non-performing but touring. Madam Speaker, it is clear to us, that the government really is incompetent to deal with something as simple as a tropical storm. This government lacks compassion. A lady in my community in the constituency of Caroni East, Karma Jackson, when the member for Laventille West says no one was marooned, she was pregnant. Pregnant and ready to have a baby. Maroon. The CNC3 and the Guardian media had to save her together with the community people. So it is clear. It is only because of the action of the community that we have saved this country. This community has saved the country. The people have saved the country in spite of a non-performing, incompetent government, the worst government this country has ever seen from time immemorial. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Lopinot, Bonner West. Madam Speaker, I wish to indicate here this afternoon that this government has in fact provided adequate resources and Madam Speaker, Bret passed through Trinidad on Monday, the 19th of June. And by the 20th of June, the Ministry of Social Development had established its Disaster Relief Operations Center, where we have been receiving reports of families that have been affected. We have been sending officers out in the field, and we are in the process of processing applications for grants. And Madam Speaker, I wish to indicate here today, the opposition seems to believe that those grants should have been processed already. Madam Speaker, the experience has shown that we have to ensure that we follow the procedures, because we do not want to have instances of double dipping and mismanagement of government funds for which we are responsible. So, Madam Speaker, we are going to ensure within 2 to 3 weeks, the persons who have been identified and who have been assessed will be provided with the necessary support in terms of repairs to their houses and replacement of furniture and equipment. Madam Speaker, the opposition is saying that we have not been out in the field. Every MP has been touring their constituencies. On Tuesday, I would have toured the entire Lopinot Bonner West constituency to determine what had happened, and we were able to take corrective action together with the regional corporation. And Madam Speaker, in terms of food support, every family that we interacted with whose food supply would have been damaged or destroyed were provided with temporary food cards, and where persons were marooned, the Minister of National Security, they were using dinghies to get to those persons to provide them with water and food supply. So it is totally erroneous and incorrect to indicate that we would not deal with persons marooned, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is talk of the Prime Minister touring. This is the very opposition that was saying, where is the Prime Minister? Our Prime Minister saw it fit to go into the area that was most hard hit, and he interacted with almost every person that he met. It was most unfortunate that the media chose to stop the one photograph where somebody just flagged him down, and he responded to give the false impression that he was in his car, not out in the field. And Madam Speaker, as I come to a close, I just want to indicate there is no river in this world where there is a storm, a hurricane, or a flood that will not flood its banks. No river. And Madam Speaker, while we empathize and we are sympathetic towards our citizens who have been flooded out, if you build a flat house in a lagoon and there is a storm, you will experience flood, Madam Speaker. But that notwithstanding, we are going to ensure that we bring the necessary relief to all of our citizens who have been affected. And lastly, Madam Speaker, the opposition wants to give the impression that maybe 100,000 persons have been affected. Madam Speaker, as of yesterday, we have received information that only 1,074 families have been affected, and we have already assessed 500 and something of those persons, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I want to assure every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago affected by Bret that we are going to provide you relief, as we have been doing, in a most timely and effective manner. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Member for Naparima.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. It is clear that this government is the worst in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. They cannot even deal with a level 1 storm, a hurricane, far less a little storm that affected Trinidad and Tobago. And today we had to come and get the excuses from the Minister of Works and Transport. excuses. I'll give 5 reasons why this government has failed this country with Bret. And the first reason is that we lack leadership. Mr. Prime Minister, you are my Prime Minister and our Prime Minister, and we expect you to be there in the forefront.
Please address your contribution to me.
Leading the charge. Thank you. Leading the charge when we have crisis. This is not a time for golf. This is not a time for holiday. This is a time for work. And the second reason why you have failed is because this government, as we have said repeatedly, has no plans whatsoever. What areas were vulnerable in this situation? What were the roles of the first responders? What intervention did we expect for them? What were the contingency plans? Did we have discussions with various institutions to make sure that we were prepared to deal with this? No plan whatsoever. No short-term plan and no long-term plan in terms of agriculture, reforestation, and dealing with the slopes and the kind of runoff that will take place from that. At the United Nations, they talk about climate change and climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation. I will advise the minister that there's a plethora of literature on this matter and that he should avail himself of this rather than just coming about ad hoc interventions. And the third question why this government has failed, as always, they do not quantify their interventions. We heard about $25 million. But $25 million, how did they come up with this? Was this on the basis of an empirical analysis of the challenges we face? Who gets what? And how do they get it? Is it for damage to property? And if so, how much? Is it for damage to crops, for livestock? And the concept of self-help grants. I was in Naparima and I'm asking people, their houses are broken down and they're asking for self-help grants. They have to get something within hours and there was no intervention I could have pointed them to. When I called the ministry, we are told to fill out a form and they'll wait 2 to 3 weeks to satisfy the demands of the citizenry. And the fourth reason is the lack of communication. Good communication in a crisis should be timely, relevant, effective, truthful, and provide comfort to the citizenry. So you had people who were pregnant. There's an old lady in my constituency in Naparima, 82 years old. And you could see the need there. And that is why our businessmen have come to the conclusion, Madam Speaker, that we will ignore this callous and cruel government and we will take our future in our hands. And that is why yesterday a contractor donated 53 mattresses and he is providing food for a soup kitchen. Madam Speaker, this is where my country has reached. This is where my country. What? Oh, well, one woman who was pregnant and an 83-year-old elderly woman in Barrackpore. Madam Speaker, we have decided to take our future.
Member for Naparima.
Yeah. Okay. We have decided to take our future in our own hands. There are about 25 unattended landslips in Garth Road and in St. Cross Road, and there is no remedy, no remedial action in sight. The Reform Hindu School could have been used as a shelter. It requires about $10 million to pay the contractor because the building is 90% complete. It could not be used. The Guacara River needs dredging. There is a master plan that needs to be put in place so that the perennial floods that take place would be reduced. In Barrackpore, the rivers were not cleared. My political leader has indicated that the cuts in the budget expenditure resulted in the fact that rivers remain uncleared and in the fact are not dredged, and whenever there's a flood, we get problems. The funds that are given to the regional corporation, Princeton Regional Corporation, are severely lacking.
The Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I rise just to give the assurance to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that any analysis made by the opposition about the government's performance would not be the final situation. To be the people of Trinidad and Tobago who will determine what kind of government they have in Trinidad and Tobago. I noticed that every member takes the opportunity to grandstand on this tragedy. I simply want to say to the people of South Trinidad in particular, where major water courses have overflowed their banks and water always flows from a high level to a low level, and those persons living at the lowest levels in some instances have experienced inconveniences and hardships, and that the government agencies have been prepared to respond and have taken every reasonable step to ensure that a response that is worthy of the development has been, is being, and will be made. And Madam Speaker, I notice every time members of the opposition get up and they're talking about golf. What about golf? Thursday was a public holiday in Tobago. Those of us who went to Tobago, like the member for Caroni East, or whoever it is there, and his partner from Orapooch, they won the golf course too. I don't know. I don't know. In Tobago. I don't know what. Same one. I don't know. Let me tell you all something. I have to make no apologies to any of you for being in Tobago. I have a house in Tobago and I live in Tobago. So I make no apologies to any of you for being in Tobago and for sleeping in my house in Tobago. And for Madam Speaker, the storm took place on Monday night. As Prime Minister, I was in Tobago on Monday night, monitoring every single preparatory action that was taking place. By 5 o'clock on Tuesday morning, the storm warning had been discontinued, and we now came out to see what has happened. That was Tuesday morning at 5 o'clock. By Wednesday after lunch, I was in Orapooch. I don't know if the minister, the member for Siparia, was missing me so much. Had I known that I'd sleep down there. Had I known she was missing me so much, I would have gone down there. But I have no house in Siparia. But I will say, Madam Speaker, that when I go out to the people of Siparia, in Orapooch, or anywhere for that matter, I go representing the best that Trinidad and Tobago has to offer. And on this occasion, every ministry, every agency that had a role to play with respect to the response to the tropical storm Bret had been on the job. And I want to take the opportunity, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding all the shouting that you heard from the other side, I want to congratulate those who prepared to respond after the storm, because some of the things that they've mentioned are quite unreasonable. I mean, I know they're good down there, but they're that good? 82-year-old pregnant woman? They're that good? And of course, Madam Speaker, there are many things that you can do only after the water has receded. And the workers at Tiantec, the workers at WASA, the agencies at ODPM, the Defense Force, the Police Service, the Defense Force, Madam Speaker, the one thing that was missing from that whole development was a Prime Minister hopping up and down in a helicopter. That's all that was missing. If they figure a helicopter is what makes it, when Diego Martin had a flood, the then Prime Minister came in a helicopter, make a big to-do in Rich Plain, and flew with a great noise. That was the end of that, except that they paid contractors twice for cleaning Diego Martin. I want to tell the people of this country, while we empathize and sympathize with those who are in difficulty, and we are using all the resources at our command to bring relief to them over time, not the same night of the flood, but over time. The one thing that is not going to happen is that the flood is not going to be used to unlawfully and improperly enrich anybody, as you all have been accustomed to. That is not going to happen. $84 million they're spending Diego Martin for cleanup, paying twice. And there are those who believe that the minute you hear flood, come out and get ready to get rich. We are going to ensure that whatever monies and assistance that comes, as I told my colleague who was chairman of Siparia, who was out with me on Wednesday, what little we have available to make available to those who have been affected, ensure that it gets to those persons who qualify for it. And others who are standing by to use the opportunity for political or other kinds of enrichment, Chupul, it's not going to happen. We are going to ensure
Prime Minister.
Those who qualify will get it.
Member for Princeton.
Madam Speaker, in true typical style this evening, while we debate such an important issue, we have a Prime Minister who stands in the Parliament with only mamagai and public relations. There has been no immediate measure with respect to what relief. The Prime Minister went to South Trinidad with his hand swinging, not a cricks, not a tin of sardine to deliver to the people. He
Member. Order. Order. Member for Princeton, you may continue. Please continue your volume.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in 24 hours, the Prime Minister assured the people of South Trinidad, and I know that they have a disdain for people in South Trinidad because they believe all those are UNC people. But Madam Speaker, the people of South Trinidad will not forgive them.
Is this a point of order, Prime Minister?
To ask you, Madam Speaker, if you will spare us under 48.6.
And 44.
Madam Speaker, the people of South Trinidad.
This session is suspended. This session is suspended. We shall return at 7:10.
This is the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM.
While viewing a sitting of the House of Representatives or the Senate, you may have noticed someone walk into the Parliament chamber holding a metal staff over his right shoulder while announcing the arrival of the presiding officer. Either gold or silver in color, this staff is known as a ceremonial mace, and its presence in the Parliament chamber symbolizes the authority and privileges of the House. The origins of the ceremonial mace date back to the 13th century, when the mace was used as a weapon by a royal bodyguard to protect the king. The person entrusted with this responsibility was known as the Sergeant-at-Arms. Between the late 1300s and early 1400s, the mace became increasingly decorative and was adorned with precious metals. The civic mace, as it was called during this period, was no longer used as a weapon, partly due to the use of heavy armor becoming obsolete. Then, during the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, the mace underwent several transformations which changed its shape, style, and use. For example, the flanged end of the mace, the top end, which was specifically designed to aid the bearer in war, was replaced with precious metals. Today, the mace is used in many parliaments across the world and bears much significance as it did in the olden days. On the day of a sitting, the Marshal of the Parliament holds the mace over his right shoulder and walks ahead of the presiding officer at the start and end of a sitting. In the chamber, the Marshal announces the arrival of either presiding officer and places the mace on the upper brackets of the clerk's table, signifying the beginning of a sitting. There are a few instances where the mace is moved from the upper to the lower brackets or removed from the House. At the commencement of a new Parliament, the presiding officer's chair is vacant, and as such, the mace is placed on the lower brackets until a new presiding officer is elected. The mace is also removed from the upper to the lower brackets when a sitting of the House has been suspended. After the debate on a bill is concluded, the bill is referred to a committee for consideration of its details. When it is sent to a committee of the whole House, the presiding officer must vacate his chair and sit in the clerk's chair. The Marshal then removes the mace from the upper brackets to the lower brackets of the clerk's table. At the end of the committee stage, the presiding officer returns to his chair and the Marshal replaces the mace in the upper brackets. Parliamentary practice dictates that no sitting of either House can take place if the mace is not present. Handling of the mace by someone other than the Marshal or a person performing such a role in his absence while the House is in session suggests willful disobedience to the rules of the House. The mace which sits in the House of Representatives at the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago was crafted by silversmith Messrs. Garrett of England in 1899 and donated to the Legislative Council of Trinidad and Tobago on June 5, 1899. It is silver gilt and has a two-dimensional silver carving of the coat of arms to the top. Its knob or head is ornamented with carved motifs which depict the landing of Christopher Columbus in Trinidad. At the top of the stem are the words Legislative Council of Trinidad and Tobago, under which are the names of the 24 subscribers to the mace. When the country achieved independence in 1962, this mace was donated to the House of Representatives. 37 years later, in 1999, the mace celebrated 100 years. Upon the suggestion of the then Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Patrick Manning, the House Speaker, Hector McLean, authorized to have the names of all the members of the Fifth Republican Parliament engraved on the bottom end stem of the mace. The mace belonging to the Senate may not bear the same historical significance as its silver counterpart, but its relevance to the chamber is undeniable. In 1962, a committee was appointed to select the design for the mace. Local metal craftsman Ken Morris submitted designs for a temporary mace, which would have been created for the inauguration of Parliament on August 31, 1962. After meeting with local artist Carlisle Chang, Mr. Morris and Mr. Chang submitted designs for the creation of a permanent mace. The decision was taken by the committee appointed to consider designs to hire highly skilled local artisans to produce the mace, as it would be considered an incentive for other craftsmen. Unfortunately, discussions on the mace reached a standstill. In 1963, it was agreed to immediately purchase a mace for the Senate because of the dissolution of the Senate of the federal government, whose mace was being used in the interim. Finally, in 1966, Mr. Chang's designs were sent to Messrs. Thomas Fattorini Limited in the United Kingdom to sculpt a mace for the Senate. This mace is still being used in the Senate today. The design of the mace of the Senate was loosely based on the mace of the Parliament of Tanzania and adapted to local purposes. Its features include 2 copies of the coat of arms, a 3-dimensional figurine at the top, and an engraving of the national emblem on its knob. The words Senate of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago are also engraved in the mace's knob. 4 round panels along the stem of the mace depict the oil industry, the sugar industry, the cocoa industry, and the symbol of the local manufacturers association. At the top of the base of the stem is an engraving of the national flower, the Chaguanas, and the Anthurium lily. The floron or end of the mace is in the shape of a cocoa pod. This mace is gold in color. Used as a weapon in ancient times to protect the king, today the presence of the mace in the chamber symbolizes the authority vested in the houses on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
This is the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM.
The Speaker.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. You have 21 minutes of original speaking time left.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker,
I've recognized the member for Port of Spain. I have recognized the member for Port of Spain North. Is there a point of order on motor vehicles which we have reverted to?
You put us out of, you put yourself out and ask.
Member, if I'm on my leg, member, I'm on my legs. You know much better. I am addressing Madam.
You can't have me sit down, huh? Sit down for yourself.
Put him out.
As I said before, I understand that there is considerable human discomfort in the country, and it must be affecting us all as their representatives. I would like us to continue with the business of the people in a manner that is in accordance with the standing orders which we have set for ourselves. The debate on the matter of the definite matter of urgent public importance is now ended. We now revert to the bill which was in progress. I now recognize the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. You have 21 minutes and 57 seconds of your original speaking time.
On what?
On your comment.
Thank you very much,
Madam Speaker, there has been no ruling on that point of order.
Members, order. Member for Caroni East. I've got it right this time. Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I rise to continue the debate, we experience
It is the right of every member. It is the right of every member who wishes to leave. But please, member for Princestown, I would ask you to apologize for that and you can leave. I would ask you to apologize for that. All right. Marshal, please escort him out.
When you come back next time, come back Wednesday. Come back Wednesday. When you come back Wednesday, Mr. Lee, you are leading us.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on behalf of Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, and the constituents that I represent, I would like to now inform the right-thinking citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that we distance ourselves from the type of behavior we've just witnessed, and I personally, as an individual, think this is yet again another sad day and sad evening in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, and the type of behavior that the younger generations have just witnessed taking place from those on the other side is something that we distance ourselves in the strongest possible manner from.
Thank you, Stuart.
Madam Speaker, we are continuing the debate of the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Act, and just before we ended, the point I was making is that the submissions made by the other side with respect to the increase in fines is a misleading submission, it's a fallacy. The only way you become subject to the fines is when you've broken the law. So as the government of Trinidad and Tobago, we tell persons, abide by the law and you will not experience any undue hardship. Madam Speaker, this bill, Madam Speaker, has not introduced any new offences. It has increased fines for offences that have been existing since 2000 and 2010 in most instances. But what this bill does, Madam Speaker, and we think it is very progressive and moving us towards developed world status, for example, can be found at Part 5A of the bill, the red light camera system. We've heard previously from the Honourable Attorney General and others as to what exactly it is this system is introducing, and it's introducing cameras being put on to red lights to really free up the use of police time and the court system and to use technology. We heard it being suggested by one of the members on the other side that what would stop criminals from just changing license plates. Madam Speaker, that was a very disheartening submission to hear. It reminded me of a time in our history when someone went on television and said, "Don't loot." In other words, those on the other side are once again in history indicating to the criminal elements how they should conduct their business. And again, this government will do everything it can, everything within its power, to ensure that the law is upheld and that it's implemented and there's a proper enforcement of this law. So we commend the Attorney General and the Ministry of Works for bringing legislation to finally introduce cameras for breaking red lights and for the increase on the fine for breaking red lights. Madam Speaker, the fixed penalty enforcement and administration found at Part 5 of the bill is very, very important in addressing some of the difficulties being experienced in the criminal justice system. Any practitioner or anyone who has had cause to experience the magistrates' court system would be aware of the vast amount of time that is wasted, very, very precious judicial time, in dealing with small traffic offences. So what this is seeking to do now is to free up both the police service as well as the criminal justice system to allow there to be an easier way, and rather than persons having to come to court, they can go ahead and pay their fines and then only come to court if they want to object to the offence with which what they're being charged. Madam Speaker, another area that I commend is the legal proceedings, demerit point, suspension and cancellation of driving permits found at Part 6A of the Act. And this demerit point system is again something that we commend. It is something that is very progressive. And what you find now for the first time, Madam Speaker, is a system such as that which exists in other developed countries, that when you've offended the traffic laws, your license will attract certain demerit points. And when you reach a certain level, your license will be revoked. Madam Speaker, the policy, and really every piece of legislation must have a policy behind it, is that we as the legislators are trying to push forward and move people away from breaking the traffic laws. We've seen, in our opinion, every single death that takes place on the roads is one too many. And what we're doing here is trying to discourage people from breaking the laws, the speed limits, forcing them to use their seat belts or encouraging them via bigger fines, and the demerit system. Don't break the red lights. Madam Speaker, I commend this legislation. We support the Attorney General in bringing this forward. The last point I'd like to address, and it's really been addressed before, and I just want to enforce it, is that this bill does not require any constitutional majority. Madam Speaker, the others, those on the other side, have for too long been trying to mislead the population and to lead attacks on very good legislation by suggesting it runs foul of the Constitution. There is absolutely nothing in this bill, Madam Speaker, that runs foul of the Constitution or affects anyone's constitutional rights. It does not require any special majority whatsoever. Madam Speaker, again, on behalf of Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, we would like to distance ourselves from what we've seen here this afternoon. I place on the record that those on this side do not see the elements that were being suggested by those on the other side. We give our undertaking to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that every creed and race shall find an equal place under this PNM administration. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member Point Forte. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, it's the 23rd of June 2017, and I rise to wind up this debate. A lot has been said, but I do so in a week where there has been a significant amount of difficulty in our nation. It seems almost a blur that we were greeting Tropical Storm Bret close to midnight on Monday of this week, dealing with the rainfall as it came on Tuesday morning, and certainly on Tuesday itself and Wednesday we have been out on the field. In fact, on Tuesday, business went back to normal. The laws of Trinidad and Tobago were being debated in the Senate on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we were on the ground, moving as a country, as we did straight through from Monday to Wednesday then. Thursday, we came back to Senate again. Work continued, and Friday, we're again in the House. I say this as I wrap up this debate to demonstrate that the laws of our country have to continue to work, and systems and procedures have to continue to be implemented. And as I stand, not for the first time unfortunately, to wrap up a debate in a parliament with no opposition opposite me, I must point out for the record that the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, which is responsible for the creation of laws in Trinidad and Tobago, causes us to have to do our work. And I wish to distance myself most respectfully and the government from the walkout by the opposition. Madam Speaker, it is incumbent to wrap up a debate properly. We have looked at the submissions of the honourable members opposite. I remind that this bill comes from the Senate. In the Senate, we spent several days debating this bill, and we went through all of the amendments that find themselves now before this House in the bill which has come to the House for debate. The issues raised by members opposite are not far different from those raised in another House. Essentially, firstly, they dealt with the issue of an alleged unconstitutionality of the bill. Oropuch East, in his usual comedic fashion, and I don't mean that pejoratively, but he tends to laugh a lot during his contribution, pointed out that the bill was somehow unconstitutional. Caroni Central said the opposite. Siparia has often drawn the entreaties, hurry up and bring this bill and we'll support it. But the opposition was all over the place in this bill. There was no consistent approach on the part of the opposition, not even as to the issue of constitutionality. The member for St. Joseph and the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's East touched the issue of constitutionality. I will just again, for the record, state in summary form, the bill does not traverse any aspect of constitutionality. Clause 9 of the bill, which introduces a new Section 20C, Section 20B, Section 20C, which are cornerstone features of the bill, provide for the acknowledgement in legislation that it is a conditionality of your driver's permit and a conditionality of owners who use the roadways that they must obey the laws attached to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. That being said, the allegation coming from the other side is that somehow the enjoyment of property in Section 4A of the Constitution is being traversed, somehow equality before the law in 4B is being traversed, somehow equality of treatment in 4D is being traversed. I even heard so far from honourable members opposite that Section 5E and 5H, which deal with fair hearing and procedural provisions, were being traversed. Let me discount 5E and 5H of the Constitution immediately by saying that there is no way that 5E and 5H could arise, because those relate to the matters of treatment under the criminal law, and we have specifically decriminalized the laws in making traffic offences converted to traffic violations, so that could not arise. Relative to the right of enjoyment of property and equality before the law, etc., again, I must repeat, not all of the Section 4 rights are strictly absolute rights. The Constitution itself recognizes them as qualified rights. In the context of there being qualified rights, the Privy Council, as the leading authority for the interpretation of our laws, in the frontline case of Surat and in the Court of Appeal decision of Northern Construction, have set out the conditions where an abrogation of rights can happen, not saying that that is the case, but in fact just simply addressing the issue of a breach of a Section 4 right. This cannot be the case. Exactly. The law is proportionate within the meaning of Section 13 of the Constitution. In a democracy such as Trinidad and Tobago, the law goes no further than to state the existing principles of law within the dicta of Baroness Hale of Richmond in Surat, and the law in fact ameliorates the position of persons who were previously under threat of criminal sanction in the previously decriminalized aspect of the law, by moving them to traffic violations, and specifically by putting a balance of proof now down from proof beyond reasonable doubt to a balance of probabilities. So far from this bill causing any constitutional problem, it alleviates the strictures which would otherwise be visited upon individuals under the criminal law. That's the actual fact in relation to constitutionality. There is no vested right in any particular procedure. That has been traversed again in the Privy Council in the seminal judgments in Hilroy Humphrey, and therefore we cannot be talking about that. Honourable members have spoken about in this allegation that the government is somehow intent upon this being a money bill, and this is all about revenue. Let me deal with that point comprehensively. We are seeking as a government to amend Chapter 4850, which is the existing motor vehicle and road traffic laws. We are also amending the law further by repealing Chapter 4852, which is the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Enforcement and Administration Act. We take the content of Chapter 4852, we pour that into Chapter 4850. We are achieving 4 purposes in law. Number 1, we are decriminalizing traffic offences and creating traffic violations, standing on the bedrock of the conditionality of user as we have described in the new Section 20A, B and C. Secondly, we are putting the use of technology into operation by introducing red light camera enforcement systems. Thirdly, we are introducing a remodeling of fixed penalty offences. And fourthly, we are introducing the much vaulted demerit point system, for which there has been legislative attempts since the year 2000. That's what this bill is achieving. In doing that, we counter the argument by Caroni Central that there is no nexus and improvement in the criminal law, and we say that this bill is squarely designed to alleviate the problems that we're facing in the criminal justice system. We have said as a matter of record that there are 100 2,000 cases in the magistracy where criminal offenses stand before the court. We have said that the current backlog is that number. We have said that there is a mechanism to take all of the matters go forward out of the court. I can state now that as a result of the consultation with the round table of contributors, the judiciary, licensing authority, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, traffic wardens, that we have in fact gone very deep into the concept of how we will call matters forward before the court and begin to move them out of the arena of backlog. The purpose for that is squarely tied into the bill because we are amending the law in section 10A of the Parent Law, chapter 4850, to add a greater persuasive power for traffic wardens. All that we do, and I remind that law for traffic wardens came about in the year 2000. Members here speak as if it is something new. When we look to the Parent Act and we look to the introduction of section 10A, we can see clear as day, section 10A, appointment and functions of a traffic warden was done by Act number 21 of 2000. And the law for breaching or not following the directions of a traffic warden is, if any driver fails to comply with directions given by a traffic warden while on duty, or obstructs a traffic warden in the execution of his duties, etc., that person is guilty of an offense and liable on summary conviction to a fine of $300 or to imprisonment for 6 months. All that we have done is to take the $300 up to $10,000. But members opposite speak as if we have done something new for the first time ever. We are in 2017. 17 years ago this law was amended to create a summary offense with a fine of $300. And the experience on review has showed us that there is no persuasion in the $300 fine, because I remind that the law, when expressed at $10,000, is an indication of maximum penalty, and there is a discretion in the summary courts to provide otherwise in the inherent jurisdiction of the courts or under the Summary Courts Act. In particular, people can even go under Section 71 of the Summary Courts Act to ask for even a reprimand and discharge. So it makes an absolute nonsense of the arguments put forward by honorable members opposite that we are doing something new in this law. Madam Speaker, there is a complete proportionality, because what we are doing on top of this, I remind, is in dealing with the free-up of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we're empowering traffic wardens to do their job. We're taking the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the traffic branch. We're saying that 100% of the traffic branch does not need to go to court. Of the 100,000 cases in the system, that requires 100,000 complainants who issue a summons. That summons must be served. If you're not served, a warrant must be then issued and then served upon you. Proof of service must be filed in the court. The policeman must turn up for the 100,000 matters. The magistrate must sit, and we must see whether the defendant comes to court or not. There is on average anywhere between a 30 to 40% overall compliance rate in the 100% utilization. And what we say now is, instead of calling all of those resources, bringing the TTPS into operation for 100% of the time, come to court when you, the offender, wishes to come to court. You tell us when you want to come to court by issuing a notice to contest. You will then have the court moved, and if you don't come, then Section 44 of the Summary Courts Act, equivalent under this legislation, kicks into effect, where the matter can proceed with, as the existing law does, ex parte in your absence. So we have removed the requirement for the police to be locked up in court, serving warrant and serving summons. And that has got to redound to the benefit of crime management and suppression. We need the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to do their job. Of the 53 prosecutors in the summary court, in the magistrates court, 8 of them only are lawyers. Of the 24 lawyers otherwise in the police service, there are only 24 others. So that's 8 and 24. We are lacking the capacity in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and members opposite can't make even an agreement amongst themselves as to why they are opposing the legislation. I cannot for the life of me understand how a parliament could experience a walkout today, inconsistency in argument, on a law that is so squarely intent upon ameliorating the circumstances of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I can't understand it. But it fits in with the pattern observed in the Senate on this bill, when the members of the opposition stretched it day after day, making no sense at all, making contributions which the government listened to, only to then say no to the bill. Thank God there was an independent bench available to lend support so that this bill could come to the House of Representatives. Madam Speaker, honourable members said that this bill was to raise revenue. Oropoch East, in his usual laughing at himself fashion, came back to us again and said, they're raining fines on people. Just like rain, they're raining fines. Let me deal with that. Madam Speaker, we pulled a matrix to compare exactly what we are dealing with. Let me put it to you this way. The 9th schedule, which section 47 of the, which clause 47 of the bill refers to, sets out in a unified one document fashion what the breach of the offence is, now violation. It sets out what the fine is, and it sets out the demerit points. That 9th schedule was created by a composition of the sections of the Act which we pulled into the schedule. The schedule is for the first time one comprehensive document, but it came from the existing law. But members are so intellectually lazy, void, or rather unwilling, intellectually unwilling to do the work just to simply find out that of the matters listed in the 9th schedule, every last one of them comes from, in large part, the bill itself, sorry, the Act itself. So let me give you an example. The existing law. Using or altering a motor vehicle or trailer for purposes not authorized. That comes from section 21B. Public service vehicle carrying excess passengers. Fine of $750 for demerit points. That comes from section 21C. Goods, vehicles carrying excess weight. That comes from 21C. Motor vehicle with the windscreen or any other window fitted with glass so tinted, treated or darkened as to obscure the view of the inside. We had a song and a dance about that. What does that mean? How do you test? That's the existing law in section 23(1)(d).
30 years.
That's the law. The $2,000 penalty is the same law it is right now. So we go through line after line. Riding motorcycle without safety helmet. Motor Vehicle Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, Section 43(1). Driving while disqualified from holding or obtaining driving permit, that's Section 42.
50 years.
Offense of driving instructor, Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, Section 46. But if the honourable members were... How should I say this? As best as I can. If they were as diligent as they are supposed to be.
And less interested in flood politics.
And less interested in flood politics. And less interested in storming out the parliament. They would simply have done the matrix approach. Or better yet, they would have bothered to talk to the senators in the UNC who received the very schedule I'm referring to now. Because, Honourable Speaker, this government has taken an approach that no other government has. We have provided the working material for senators and for members of the House to use. We provide track change documents. We provide aids for interpretation. We provide for them the cross-reference table and matrix. We even take their comments and we provide reasons why we don't agree with their comments in writing. No other Attorney General in the history of Trinidad and Tobago has done that. And you know why they have not done that? Because usually there's a fear. If I show them what I have, they'll come with something better. It's one-upmanship. Now I'll wait on the floor and I'll drop it on the floor so they have no time. I'm not interested in that. This government is not interested in that. This Prime Minister, in allowing the privilege that I have just expressed to portray itself in actuality, has said, here is the intellectual property. Here's the product. Here's where we got it from. Here's why we are dealing with it this way. May we have your view on the product. It's no different from what we did on FATCA. We did exactly that in writing on FATCA when they walked out 3 times. We put it in writing. We had not one amendment from them. They were in the newspapers giving full-page ad paid for by the Parliament as their views. We took the ad, we wrote our responses. We have taken an approach to legislation that no other government has ever taken before. And I don't say that in any self-praise, but it is to explain to the people of Trinidad and Tobago how serious we are. And it is not that I am any rocket scientist in that regard. That is the effort and work product of the hard-working civil servants and public servants in the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Madam Speaker, the so-called reining of fines and where all of these silly offences came from, so convincing are they that I received a call from a couple of my members saying, what's that they're talking about? Taxi driver and tinted and stuff. I went back and checked every single regulation, every single aspect of the law. It's the existing law. But what we said as an undertaking on the Parliament record is that we are traversing that right now, and we intend to amend it in a holistic fashion, because I have pulled the statistics for offences for every single registration that is in the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, so that I'll know what the actual usage is, statistically driven. May I remind, it is this government that has this country talking about who and what we are honestly for the first time. How many child marriages we have, how much it costs to deal with our prisoners, how many road traffic offences we have, how many cases in arrears, how many judges we have or don't have, what the health sector looks like in the Welsh Committee report, what the Trinidad and Tobago Police looks like in a manpower audit, what the agricultural industry looks like. A master gas plan was laid in this Parliament by this government. But you see, all of this gets buried under flood politics. Tall boots, mud walking, mudslinging politics. There is no need for Trinidad and Tobago to shut itself down in every tropical thunderstorm. No need. We have to work our way out of the event. And I condemn people that stay home or encourage staying home to work. The Senate went to work on the Tuesday. We were in the Senate. We were in the courts. The Chief Justice called and said, are we on green light? I said, Chief Justice, we are on. We are open. Because we have prisoners to move. People expecting their cases to be called. And that's what responsibility is. Responsibility is not Mamagai. It is not gallery. It is not talk of racism. It is not flood politics, Madam Speaker. And I'm very upset that the opposition is not here to even hear a word of what we're saying.
Using a genuine hardship situation.
Absolutely correct. Using a genuine situation of hardship in our country to create pandemonium and division along the worst lines possible. The talk of race, Madam Speaker. That is where the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago is today on the 23rd of June 2017 at 7:43 p.m. and 10 seconds. That's where we are. So, Madam Speaker, it is no rain of fines, it's existing law. We did take the opportunity to improve some of the fines. We went through every single one of the demerit points. We adjusted them. The issue of whether the minister should have the ability to amend the schedule as the minister does in the existing law has been the feature of existing law for donkey years. All of a sudden, affirmative resolution required. Put it in the parent law. You know why, Madam Speaker? So that we can come and spend time in the Parliament, debating hours and hours and hours, going in circles, when the existing law there for all time usage, certainly under the period 2010 to 2015, never changed, is let the minister do it by regulations or schedules.
Exactly.
But all of a sudden it has to change. And do you know why, Madam Speaker? Most respectfully, in my view, it is because it is the only way that the opposition will make itself relevant to obstruct the course of the passage of laws in this country. Madam Speaker, we've spoken to constitutionality, we've spoken to the illogical, reprehensible allegation that this is all about money. It's the existing law which the UNC put into operation for the whole 5 years and 3 months that they were in office for. But did you once hear the People's National Movement and opposition make the allegations raised? Not once was it raised. And this approach to improving the law that we have taken, which is to operationalize at the same time that we legislate, is the only approach to change the first issue spoken about, which is how law can change culture. It's true that if you break, it's true. Procedural. No? Procedural motion, Madam Speaker.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 15.5, I beg to move that this House do sit until the completion of the business before it.
Honourable members, the question is that this House continue to sit until the completion of the business before it. All in favour say aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Attorney General.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, the fact is we have thought out the implementation and operationalization of this law. The hard-working members of the Ministry of Works and Transport and Licensing Division and the Judiciary and the TTPS have sat down and filled in all of the data and information that was not done. It was halted in the period 2010 to 2015. Driver's license have gone to a new level with new security features. We can expect that driver's licensing, unique identifier access points are going to be provided to the whole million people on the database by email access, so you'll know what your demerit points look like, you will know what the access to that system looks like, you'll be able to receive your information from the licensing authority about your points and communication, and that takes care of how we communicate with the driving public of Trinidad and Tobago. Ahead of us, next stage is the call-in for license plates, etc., after we consider as a cabinet the final regulations to cause the operationalization of the RFID tag plates. We are fully in operation with the wide area network and local area network between judiciary, fixed penalty notice issuers, licensing authority, the red light cameras, the spot checkers which are coming to major archways. And that way the infrastructure goes to work much like it does in the flooding. This kind of infrastructure is to lead the way. Leadership is not who is first to put on their boots and walk in flood waters. That is gallery for picture. Leadership is not about taking donations from contractors, not knowing where it comes from and handing it out to people nilly-willy. It's about organization and structure and ensuring that our society goes to work, Madam Speaker. We've matrixed this out. We're prepared to operationalize. We are confident this law is good law, and in those circumstances, I beg to move.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 5850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit point system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system, and related legal proceedings and other related matters be now read a second time. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Bill entitled An Act to Amend the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit point system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system, and related legal proceedings and other related matters.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 68-1, I beg to move that the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017 be committed to the Committee of the Whole.
Honourable members, the question is that the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017 be committed to the Committee of the Whole. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House will now go into the Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause.
Clause 1.
Madam Chair, may I make a proposal for your consideration? The government has considered carefully the proposals by the opposition in the debate. There were no proposals circulated as required under the standing orders for amendment. Particularly insofar as we received significant amendments in the Senate, I humbly propose, in light of the government's position that there are no amendments that we have coming out of the debate into this bill, that we could perhaps consider taking this bill in group fashion, subject to your consideration.
Attorney General, the difficulty is that the bill is not presented in such a form that we can say part 1, part 2. It's not presented in that way. So while it may appear as a reasonable request, I can't, regrettably, I can't
as you please,
entertain
Madam
it.
Speaker.
But having regard to all that you've said, we should be able to proceed quickly if all members, are present.
Clause 1.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 1 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 1 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 2.
The question is Clause 2 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 2 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 2 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 3.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 3 now stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 3 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 4.
The question is that Clause 4 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 4 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 4 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 5.
The question is that Clause 5 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 5 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 5 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 6.
The question is that Clause 6 stand part of the bill.
Madam Chairman, for my own observation, is it our intention to go clause by clause?
Prime Minister, as tedious as it may be, I have been advised that I have no other option based on how the bill
that's one question. I don't know where that advice came from, Madam Speaker, because I've been in many committees, and we've taken, if someone who is present wants to make an intervention on any clause, then you can. But if we're taking the clauses, we can go 47, 10 to 15, as we choose on the block. But there's no requirement to go and repeat every single clause.
Well,
I've been in very many committees in this House.
What has been the experiences, as I indicated on the intervention made by the Attorney General, if the bill is formatted in respect of parts, we can take parts. This bill is not formatted in in parts. There are parts, but they are part of the amendment, the original bill, so that it can't be done like that. What I can possibly do, we reach where?
We are at 5 now, so we could do
At 5. Minister of Finance.
Years in this place, there have been many pieces of legislation which are not in parts, and clauses have been done in batches of 5 and 10. I've experienced that on many occasions over the last 25 years.
And
therefore, I do not think the advice you have received.
Well, what I would say, therefore, that we can do it in batches, but we can't do 1 to 47. Okay? So we've reached 5, and therefore what we will do in proceedings,
Right, 6 to 10.
after we do 6 to 10.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Clauses 6 to 10.
The question is that clauses 6 to 10 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 6 to 10 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 6 to 10 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 11 to 15.
The question is that clauses 11 to 15 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 11 to 15 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 11 to 15 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 16 to 20.
The question is that clauses 16 to 20 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 16 to 20 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 16 to 20 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 21 to 25.
The question is that clauses 21 to 25 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 21 to 25 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 21 to 25 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 26 to 30.
The question is that clauses 26 to 30 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 26 to 30 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 26 to 30 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 31 to 35.
The question is that clauses 31 to 35 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 31 to 35 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 31 to 35 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 36 to 40.
The question is that clauses 36 to 40 now stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 36 to 40 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 36 to 40 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 41 to 45.
The question is that clauses 41 to 45 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 41 to 45 now stand part of the bill.
Clauses 46 to 49.
The question is that clauses 46 to 49 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 46 to 49 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 46 to 49 now stand part of the bill.
Schedule.
You taking it? All right. The question is that the schedule now stands part of the bill. The question is that the schedule now stands part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The schedule now stands part of the bill. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be now reported to the House. Those in favor say aye.
Madam Chair, just before you put that, just for the record and so that we are very, very comfortable, I just refer the House to Standing Order 72, which in fact expressly provides us with the privilege to put groups of clauses forward so that once there are no amendments. So I feel very comfortable with that fact. Just for the record, thank you. I apologize for interrupting.
Noted, Attorney General. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be now reported to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to report that the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017 was considered in the Committee of the Whole and approved without amendments. I now beg to move that the House agree with the committee's report.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the committee's report on the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2017. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit point system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system and related legal proceedings and other related matters be forthwith read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit points system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system and related legal proceedings and other related matters be now read a third time and passed. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, to introduce a system of traffic violations for certain breaches of the Act, to provide for the implementation of a red light camera system, a demerit point system, and the reform of the fixed penalty system and related legal proceedings and other related matters.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the House do now adjourn to Wednesday, the 28th day of June at 1:30 p.m. Madam Speaker, on that day, we will do the miscellaneous provisions trial by judge alone Bill 2017. Madam Speaker, before we do adjourn, however, I would like to request that we be allowed to give Eid greetings. Thank you.
Honourable members, as we are all aware, that during this weekend the Muslim community will be ending their month-long fast for Ramadan and will be observing the day of Eid ul-Fitr. On the day of Eid ul-Fitr, members of the Muslim faith attend mosque to pray, to listen to sermons, and to give alms to the poor. For Muslims, this most holy day in the calendar, Eid ul-Fitr, not only marks the end of the fasting of the month of Ramadan, but is also the first day in the month of Shawwal. I will now call upon members to express greetings on this occasion of Eid ul-Fitr. Attorney General.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi alaikum wa barakatuh. I bring you, on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, greetings for the festival of Eid. Madam Speaker, Eid ul-Fitr, Eid in Arabic meaning celebration, ul-Fitr literally referring to the fast, the celebration of the breaking of fast, is one of the two sacred observations of all Muslims around the world. We will be looking for the moon, which is the signal, or the halal, the crescent moon with the star, to be found usually first in Saudi Arabia and then announced anywhere between the period of Sunday to Monday night into Tuesday. This Eid, Eid ul-Fitr, is in fact also referred to as Eid al-Saghir, or the smaller Eid, because it is in reference to the fact, much like Christianity, that it is Eid al-Adha, or the festival of the sacrifice, which is the more sincere and solemn of the obligations. Not too far different from the crucifixion of Christ as it is to Christmas. These two Eids constitute reflection for humanity. The Eid ul-Fitr, which we are celebrating now, really centers around the 5 pillars of Islam. And the 5 pillars of Islam are, of course, Shahada, which is faith, Zakat, which is charity, Salat, which is prayer, and we, of course, come to Som, which is fasting, and Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca. It is after the pilgrimage period that Eid al-Adha is actually celebrated. And that again finds commonality in religion because it is in reference to Ibrahim, or Abraham as he's referred to in the Bible, being called upon by God to give the ultimate sacrifice of his son. And God so favored his sacrifice that he in fact exchanged his son for a sheep. This element of sacrifice is born into an element of celebration. Ramadan, when it first came about, was really the longest, hottest month in the Islamic calendar. The Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar. And in that lunar calendar, when the Prophet, may peace rest upon him, came upon the scriptures as revealed to him, the Holy Quran, the Prophet was actually dealing with the fasting period being in the longest, hottest month of Ramadan. That in the Middle East means that somewhere around 2 a.m. it's sunlight, and somewhere around 10 or 11 o'clock at night it's actually sunset. So the fasting was a very long period from sunrise to sunset. In that period of fasting, one is required to reflect upon the simple realities of life. Hunger, reflection upon God, charity, commitment. Because when you come to the breaking of your fast, you're actually intended to break fast with those less fortunate than you. And very much in the other parts of the world which are larger in Islamic coverage, that breaking of fast every evening is in fact a very grand event for the entire month of Ramadan, where streets are made open and people come in, and those who are in hunger or in poverty are fed without question. And a whole month of that tradition takes us into a reflection which actually carries on for the rest of the year. Islam has been under a significant amount of attack around the world, largely borne about through the actions of certain people who claim to adhere to Islam, but who, like persons before in our history, be it the Spanish Inquisition or otherwise, are really people that twist the beauty of Islam and its submission to the will of Almighty Allah. For Trinidad and Tobago, the end of Ramadan, the beginning of the month of Shawwal, the first day of Shawwal, which is the end of Ramadan, is Eid al-Fitr, and it is that day that charity and prayer is obligatory to all Muslims. It comes at a very good time for us. We have just gone through some significant events as a country. It is through the charity of the volunteers in our society and the hard-working public servants and the maintenance of calm and order that our society is working its way through the difficulties, no doubt guided by Subhanallah, as it is said, the will of God or the blessings of God or the guidance of God. God is referred to as the most beneficent and the most merciful in the superlative sense. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, as the saying goes, in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, signifying the epitome of mercy and beneficence. In those circumstances, the government of Trinidad and Tobago is very pleased to join with the Muslim community, and in true Trini fashion, the Christian community, the Hindu community, because we grew up in a society where there was religious tolerance and reciprocity of religion. Certainly in San Fernando we grew up that way, where we celebrated all, and the rest of Trinidad is very much the same. Tobago is as well, and there is a strong Muslim population in Tobago as well. So, Madam Speaker, it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to say Eid Mubarak, celebration which is a large and successful one. Congratulations on celebration of Eid al-Fitr. May the blessings of Almighty Allah shower upon us. And permit me just to explain lastly one last point. Allah in Arabic is a combination of two words. Al-Ilah. Al meaning the definite article. Ilah meaning God, any God. A God of stone is an Ilah. A God of wood, a God of whatever you may call it. Al-Ilah is in reference to the God, the supreme God, the epitome, the omniscient, the omnipotent God. And in Christianity, one refers to God as Allah as well in Arabic. So when we say in the name of Allah and the blessings of Allah, it is truly a word for all of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I too stand to extend to the community and to all citizens of our nation. As indicated in the greetings of the Attorney General, one of the significant pillars of Eid al-Fitr is charity, as demonstrated in the giving of alms. I respectfully wish to encourage all citizens to adopt a charitable outlook in the giving not only of our material goods, but in the giving of our time, our talents, and skills in the service of others and for the promotion of our common good. The call to charity in its wider sense is all the more topical at this time, as many of our citizens have suffered loss and are enduring hardship in the aftermath of the tropical storm Bret, which we experienced a few days ago. And therefore there exists a pressing need for each of us to reach out and assist those afflicted fellow residents in some form or manner. Let us as a nation use this occasion to impress on ourselves the virtues of temperance, compassion, and selflessness, which all flow from adopting a charitable outlook, and which shall redound to the creation of a better Trinidad and Tobago. May we all manifest charity in the celebration of Eid al-Fitr. Eid Mubarak. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Wednesday, 28 June 2017 at 1:30 p.m. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Wednesday, 20th June 2017 at 1:30 p.m.